Good evening.
Good evening.
Technology makes everything better except for the one who has to run it. So it makes. I hope you appreciate the slides. It's just going to have the questions that are also on there as well. But we have the TV in here now, so I'm obligated to use it. So I hope everyone's doing great this evening. For all of those who were able to attend the Golden Banquet, thank you. I believe we had a really great turnout. As far as my estimations, it was a huge success, and better things to come for next year for sure. And so I appreciate everyone that's coming out. I especially appreciate the kids who stepped up and served, and they really let their light shine today. So thank you for all that. So today, Gary, I want to thank Gary for the lesson. He really gave us a doozy this morning, and it gave us a lot of food for thought, I believe. And it's just so wonderful to be able to see and realize that human nature hasn't changed. That a lot of times we hear, oh, these days today are just as worse as they've ever been, and we kind of can see it in that lens a lot of times, especially with the news, the doom and gloom, and all these things. But when we look back and we see how things were 2,000 years ago, nothing's changed in so many ways. We have so many of Jesus' day who were religious, but who were not doing the right things. And so this whole lesson is about religion, but it's about second-guessing Jesus and his design. And not only second-guessing Jesus, but second-guessing God who had originated all of these things. And so for the Pharisees and for the religious leaders of Jesus' day, we had a power struggle in a large way, where we had these people who were trying to control, but they were, as Jesus said, blocking the doors from anyone else entering, and they were not entering the kingdom of heaven either. And so to just jump into some of these questions here, and I think as we do the lesson, for those who weren't able to make it this morning, who weren't able to see it, it'll become evident what we're talking about. Now, we were in Mark chapter 2 and Mark chapter 3 this morning. But for the first question, do people struggle more with whether God is real or whether God is right about how we should live? What do you think people struggle more with? Whether or not he's real? Okay.
I think it's more like how we should live.
Yeah?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it could be a combination.
Sure.
Because nowadays people, they want to see something before they believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't believe it, how can it be real to them?
Yeah.
Ian? If God is real, then and he calls us to make an account for what we've done. We'd rather think, in essence, we struggle with whether God is real because we struggle with whether he's right, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Whether the words that he's given us about himself are true. Because if he is real, that means they probably are true. And that the things that we feel about morality and whatnot, they don't just come from us or from society. They come from something much higher and greater than everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the thing we naturally like to contend with. And so we'd rather ignore it. Or sometimes we make it an intellectual problem. We'd rather not deal with the moral side of it. We just want to think of God as something that can be scientifically tested.
Prove.
Right? It
Yeah.
can't be.
Yeah. Okay. Titus.
I think people struggling with believing that God is right because they want to be like always right. People want themselves to right more than someone that they don't even know, and actually they do know them.
Okay. And I think this is what Gary was getting at here, that most, especially religious people or spiritual-minded people, it's not a question whether God exists or not. but it becomes a question of how I've heard it said of idolatry. A lot of times we will make our own God, and we'll say, you'll hear people say this, oh, well, a God that's good and just won't condemn me. I'm a good person. I treat my neighbors right, and I do all these things, and completely missing the point of God requires obedience to His will and His word. And a lot of times we want to fabricate our own idea of what God is, which would come down to this idea that, are we actually challenging how we're living? A lot of people, especially when you talk to Christians, people who profess to be Christians, they're not going to debate whether or not God is real. They know God exists, but are their actions reflecting like things that Ian was saying about, okay, if God is real, there are some implications there that we have to live in a certain way. Instead, we'd rather choose to believe that, well, the God that I serve is thus and so, and so it's. I believe this is really where we're at here. God is. It's not a question, especially in this group, whether or not God is real, but is He right? Is He right in what He's doing? And it's not from our verbal acknowledgement, but it's from our lifestyle, how we live. We'll answer that question. So next question, when people say, I'm spiritual and not religious, what are they usually avoiding?
You want to hit it on your slide.
There we go. Thank you. So when people say, I'm spiritual but not religious, what are they usually avoiding? What are they trying to avoid? Church?
Obedience.
Okay, so we got church, we got accountability, obedience, all right? Commitment. Okay, all right. Titus?
They think that church and all that kind of stuff is a waste of time.
Okay. They have better things to do. All right. They're avoiding doing these things because they have other things that are filling their calendars.
Walk that tightrope.
Can you expound on that?
You've heard it say either you're on one side of the fence or the other.
Yeah.
People want to ride the middle of that fence.
Okay. Yeah.
Seems like.
Yeah, Jared and I were talking about this the other day. The devil owns the fence. They want to ride the fence. The devil owns the fence. And you got to be on one side or the other for sure. Yeah, Ian.
They're trying to avoid losing control.
Okay.
Because if there's something beyond you that's calling you to be religious, that kind of takes the control away from you. You don't get to decide how you live. And we like control, naturally. That's kind of what God has done on us in the first place. And so, giving that up, that requires us to give up our pride too, like all these things. It requires us to acknowledge we are small, and God is not.
Yeah.
And we can't be in control of everything in our lives. It's not what our responsibility and free will is for.
And this goes back to Gary's lesson on baptism and on inception, the trauma of holiness. If we neglect, if we fail to see who God truly is, and we want to be in control, we're rejecting His authority. We're rejecting who He actually is. All right, very good. So what kind of faith does that actually produce over time? When people say, oh, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Like Gary was using the example, oh, well, the lake is the church, my church, or the woods are my church. When we have this sort of attitude, what kind of faith does that produce over time?
Hollow.
Say it again?
Hollow.
Hollow. Okay.
Apathy.
Yeah. Apathy. It'll go away? Okay. Yeah, eventually it will. It will. Yes, sir.
You're saying it's hollow. There's no real concrete principles to it, right?
Yeah.
Or if there are, it's not principles that are based on God's truth. Really. They're principles that are decided by their mind. And if that's the case, then that means those principles can change and shift, right? And so it doesn't have real substance to it. It's just
Right.
what the person holding that thing wants it to be.
Right.
And so it can't, it's not solid.
And this goes back to the the parable of the wise and the foolish builders, and how one built his house upon the rock, and the other built it on no foundation. And this leaves it, like Gary was saying, this is a self-centered person. You're completely centered on yourself. That is your God. There's no mission. There's just no authority that you're going to be subject to. All right, very good. So next question, where do you see people shaping faith around? Where do you see people shaping faith around what they want instead of what God has said?
Your lifestyle?
Okay. Our actions, yeah. Where do we see people shaping their faith? Around what they want. Okay.
Shaping their face every day in the way they live.
Have you ever-
Jobs, sports, family, just going out to the lake. I mean, they shape it around everything. Just try to fit God in between, or say like, oh, like you said, that's their religion or their spirituality is going out there. Oh, I'm around God here. Just being selfish all about yourself makes them feel good. That's not helping anybody else come to Christ.
Have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, well, I decided I was going to go to that church because they had a good children's program," or "I like that church because they have a band," or whatever it may be. And I think it goes to, and very rightly so, what Gary was saying about there's so many people in the church who have this consumer mindset, and it's what can they offer me? And if they're not being entertained, if we're not entertaining them in some sort of way, that they're going to go find something else to do. And I think that when we have our faith shaped around what people want instead of what God has said, they're just going to go wherever the wind blows them. Whatever they desire is going to shape that faith. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay, so why do good things from God, like rest or worship, like the Sabbath, end up feeling heavy or end up being a burden? Because this is what Jesus was talking about this is what the whole parable was about there. That this day that was supposed to be a time of rest, reflection, recharge, spiritual things, was put these people in so much bondage. They were fearful of even wearing the same clothes from day to day because they might inadvertently plant something. And so why do good things from God like this end up being a burden?
Because it takes up too much time.
Okay?
What'd you say?
She said it takes up too much time. But how can things like the Sabbath that were meant to be something healthy and good and from God be something that ends up being a burden? Priscilla, then you.
People enforcing the rules in like the wrong way.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I think it's important to recognize that there's always a purpose behind everything, right? When we miss that purpose, whether it's we miss maybe our purpose, glorifying God, or we miss the purpose of the command and how that serves to glorify God. And we start to think of it as something that we think of it through our lens and the way we want to think about it. Our natural flesh wants to think about it. And it's a burden because it requires things of us. It might require sacrifice, or it requires us to slow down. But when we miss the point of the command, that makes it a lot harder to obey it because we don't see how it's helping us. Right? If we don't understand that the reason God ordered the Sabbath is so that we rest and that we have more energy to do good work and we feel recharged. If we miss the point of that, then we won't understand why we need to do the Sabbath. We won't want to do the Sabbath because we don't get it. Or when it's about sharing our faith, it's not just, you have to go proselytize now. Like, that's not just for the sake of proselytizing. There's a purpose to it because we want people to know who God is and what He wants from them and what's going to happen to them if they don't listen. That's why we share that faith.
Yeah.
And we want people to partake in this joyful thing we found, this joyful thing that God has given us. For all these things, and when you don't have that point, when you can't see the point of the command, or these guidelines that He gives us, it just seems like something for the sake of itself, and you start to see it as something draining. So we need to have that purpose, and we need to understand where this fits into glorifying God and fulfilling the purpose He's given us.
And I think this is, I'm going to touch on this point a little bit because Jesus, this was a big part of His ministry. He was saying, you guys are not understanding the reason behind this. He said that you're so concerned with straining out the gnat, you're swallowing a camel. And so many of His teachings was, you're not getting this. This is not what this is about. And how often do we do those things? How often do we do those things as a church where we have people that believe that being a Christian is just sitting in the pews and spectating, and we have so much more to offer than that. What we do on Sunday should recharge us for how we live the rest of the week. And a lot of times we're just Christians here. And I think this was kind of getting to the underlying message of Gary's lesson this morning. And so have you seen something like this? Have you seen something meant to help people that actually weigh them down?
Your computer died.
Okay. Well, that's as far as that goes. You all have the thing there. Yep. Okay. I didn't bring the chart, so that's that. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm still in my age, but that's okay. But do you remember, no, I know you're not, but years ago, we had the blue wall. You didn't have all the stores open. You didn't have all that. More people went to church, and more people were family oriented.
Yeah.
But now everything's open, and there's just too much to do on things.
Yeah. And which goes back to Ian's, what are we doing here? Why? Why are we doing this? Because somewhere along the line, it got missed that church or worship or whatever the events are that's going on in church is just another event that's competing with the calendar. And when we treat it that way, this is the kind of thing we get. And so this question isn't on here, but how do we get away from this mentality? How do we go from I believe that everybody that's here now, we see the value. We've talked about this before. We see the value in why we're here, what we're doing behind this. So how do we convey that to others? What can we do as a congregation to convey that to others? That to see the value in not only being at Bible study and being at these discussions, but participating in the other works and ministries that we have.
Lead by example, speak up in the house. Don't take no for an answer.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question just so I make sure I got it?
So how do we convey the idea that we believe in the sense of we got to start with why? And we see so many people that are just Sunday morning Christians. And how can we help them see there's more value to worship and more value to Christianity than just punching the time clock? Micah, go ahead.
Showing others that we make our priorities take what is important to us first.
Okay. That leading by example. Yes, very good. Go ahead, Daniel.
By having more Bible studies with them throughout the week.
Okay. Spending more time with people in spiritual settings. Okay. So,
I think, part of tying into what he said, being present in these things, right? And then I think it's okay to talk about the ways going to church upright. This sermon, maybe you can say like, the sermon today, it really helped me sort through some stuff, right? Or just like, being around the church really energized me today. Like, it helped me do stuff. And just being present and showing people like, hey, this stuff's meant to do something more than just fill up a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
It's not meant to be just a religious obligation. It's meant to be, and that's what it is, in a sense. But it has a purpose. And it does more than just be there for its own sake. And I think we can illustrate that by the way we respond to it, and the way we show others how it's working in us. So I think that's important.
Okay. Very good.
I'm gonna direct this. Correct me if I'm wrong, the lady that came in with y'all today, y'all did not know, correct?
I did not know
Did
her.
y'all, cause this is a good example of this question, because they didn't take no for an answer. Could you tell, I think I heard you correctly, y'all didn't know her, y'all saw her out in the parking lot.
She was getting out of her car at the same time we were. She asked Jared, what time does church start? He said, well, it starts at 10.
This is before Sunday school, correct?
Yes, and she had one foot back inside of her car and was saying, I will come back then. And I said, well, no, come on in, you can sit with us. We're kind of crazy, but you can still sit with us. So she did.
I think that's a good example of, like Jared said, not taking no for an answer. Or like, some people want to do other different things. They get there right here in our parking lot. And they weren't going to brag on themselves, but I did it for them. I mean, that's what we should be representing.
Right.
She might not even come in then. She might have talked herself out of it. They were like, let's go, come on. Sometimes that's what it takes for other people.
That's what Jesus would have done, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's our motto on this church, eh?
Mhm.
Walk up.
Or we just be like, well, the webs did.
I just figured she probably wouldn't have drove back.
Yeah.
Within the hour. So just come on now. You're already here.
She was actually auditing churches, so she's going from place to place to see where she fits in.
She used to go here, she said. Long time ago.
All right.
So
All great.
she engaged her in conversation through.
We had on the same pants.
This
Trying
is
to make her feel welcome so that she will come back, or
Yeah.
when she finishes her audit, she'll feel like, well, the most hospitable,
Yeah.
most friendly, they asked me to come in, come sit with us, engage her, introduce her to people, in hopes that she returns.
Right. And so what I'm hearing from this is having interaction with people, one-on-one personal interaction, finding commonalities, and being able to reach people on a personal basis, a personal level. And a lot of times it can be intimidating to come, even if you're a member here and you're like, oh, well, I've never been to Wednesday night Bible study, or I've never been to one of the other things. It can be intimidating oftentimes, and so to have that friendly face, to have that, even an invite. I know we've had many people that don't normally come. Sarah's invited, and they'll come, and so there's a lot of just us asking the questions, just us not taking no for an answer. I know my two oldest girls, they're always trying to orchestrate their friends coming, and because they were constantly at them this morning, that one of them couldn't come, but the other did, and so it was really good that they are able to communicate that and invite them.
There's also the mentality of like, well, that's somebody else's job. I'm not.
Yeah.
That's the outreach program, or that's Gary's job, or that's the elder's job. When in actuality, anybody that calls themselves a Christian or a member of the church, that should be in their job description as well.
That's right.
We are the outreach of this church.
Right.
Yeah.
The church
Yeah.
is the outreach.
If
Yeah.
they come in and
Yeah.
nobody speaks to them, they're gonna feel very unwelcome.
Right.
Like it's a closed-off club. What are
Yeah.
you doing here?
And I've been to those churches.
A lot.
I mean, we traveled for 4 years, so going to those churches sometimes makes you feel like, oh my, is God in this church? Because I don't feel it. And those churches right there, I was like, okay, I'm never going back to that church. I've been there, and it's a terrible feeling.
For sure. Very good. Very good. And I think going back to these underlying things here, what are we supposed to be doing as Christians? We're just supposed to come and put our money in the collection plate and take the Lord's Supper and sing some songs? Like, is that what makes us Christians, or is there more to it? What is our purpose? What is our mission? What is God calling us to do? And when we answer those questions, we see that those things are necessary, but it's not the end. And for us to really reflect on that and see where's our gift? What can we do? How can we do the outreach? We notice people that are here that aren't familiar, that are visitors. Even those who are here all the time, I don't know that person's name. I'm going to go introduce myself or whatever it may be. These are all things that we can do to make this place a little warmer, a little brighter. And I think when we have we build those bonds, we strengthen those connections, amazing things can happen. All right, very good. So number 7, when Jesus was challenged about the Sabbath, what was he really defending, the rule or the person? What was he really defending? Let's go back to that. What was going on there? They were plucking grains and they were eating them. And then Jesus ends up saying that God made Sabbath for the man, not the man for the Sabbath. What was he talking about? What did he mean by that?
The law was made to help man and not take the place of.
It's not meant to do their wellness.
Right. It's not meant to be a burden, right? It's supposed to allow freedom in that sense. So where do we still choose rules over people today? Great. Where do we still choose rules over people? Yes.
Definitely. I feel like I can't imagine what Gary talked about, where it's like, oh, you're running a church and there's someone that needs help, but you're not going to stop and help them because you're late in church.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's a very uncommon occurrence for a lot of people. And that's something that you can be, if you're going to be late to something, you're going to be late to something. Especially if you're already past running late, like, no matter how much time you get there, you're still going to be late. And so, I think especially if you're going to church, most people are going to understand if you stop and help someone along the way. And if that means that you're going to be like, half an hour late, so be it. Right? The church, like Gary talked about, is meant to motivate us to do stuff like that.
Right.
And church is important, right? But it can't take always precedence in the sense that we're helping people, because that's what the church is for. And by missing the person, you miss the point of the church.
I never speak, but I'm going to speak to you.
Okay, let's hear it.
I was going to share this story. This actually happened to me in Dallas, Texas. I was preaching at a church on Sunday night. And in the middle of my lesson, maybe 10 minutes in, we had a teenage boy who collapsed in an epileptic episode. And so we're calling the ambulance, and people are trying to keep him from choking himself to death. He's laying in the floor like the 4th row back, and everything's around there. And one of the elders comes up to me and tells me that he thinks it'd be a good idea if I would continue my sermon while we're waiting on the ambulance. And I said, I think we have more important things to take care of right now than a second point in this sermon.
Yeah.
But we get so caught up in forms that we think that we have to maintain the exteriors rather than to fortify the interiors. And I think that's really what we're getting.
Yeah. When we look at, like Ian was saying in the illustration here Gary just gave us, that when we are so concerned with doing what is right, we forget to do what is good. And what is more pleasing to God? For us to make sure that we have perfect attendance, or that we're actually carrying out His commands. And You know,
I think of what Jesus referred to. Somewhere in the scripture says, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice."
right.
If you're going on your way to sacrifice something, but you don't go and stop and help someone on the way, like, are you honoring God?
Yeah.
Right? By giving the sacrifice, what matters here? The sacrifice it was just a ceremonial thing, in a sense. It brought atonement, but just fulfilling that obligation isn't the point. We missed the point again. The person right over there, that was the point of this religion that God gave the Jewish people. They were supposed to help people, and instead they walk right by him, and because they're on their way to go fulfill their religious obligations, they miss the point.
Right.
When you don't have the point, not only do you see these things as burdens, but you don't help you end up sort of nullifying the purpose. Right? You miss out on all the benefits of practicing these religious things with the right attitude. If you don't have the right heart or the right foundation for it, it's just a thing. That's all it is. The sacrifice is just a thing. If the heart isn't in the right place, the sacrifice isn't going to help you.
This is exactly what Jesus says when he says, you have something against your brother, leave your gift at the altar and go correct it first. And this isn't even whether or not you need to help somebody. This is making things right, which if we're just going, we're worshiping, and we have unresolved issues with our Christian brethren, what are we really doing? What Jesus is saying, from what I understand, is that we're worshiping unacceptably. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in whether it's the appearance of things or whether it's just going through the motions that we forget what this is really about and what we're to do. And one of the things that I really fell in love with this congregation is that you all are workers. That there's so many ministries and so much work that's going on here, and that I see that. Before I came here, I used to think that my faithfulness was gauged by my attendance, by if I was there all the time. And I see so many people here working and serving and having so many things that is not just the 3 times that we're open for services. And there are so many faithful people here, and it's just such an encouraging to check that belief and really see when there's work being done, we're missing the point if we think that our faithfulness is just gauged by our attendance and services. I think those things are important, but there's so much more to it than that. Jared.
It reminds me of the parable of the Good Samaritan, the guys that passed up the injured man on the road because they had somewhere else to be, or they thought he was prejudged what he was or why he was injured, and the least of the men, the Samaritan man, stopped and helped him out, and paid for his lodging.
Yeah. He was the one that understood the point, right? He was the one that was the neighborly to the man. And this was what Jesus was saying. This is the second greatest commandment that they're talking about here. And the other ones who were supposed to be these faithful religious leaders of that day, they just passed by. And they violated that command and everybody agreed that that's what happened in Jesus' parable there. Yeah. So where has your faith, number 9, where has your faith felt more like pressure than like freedom? When has your faith felt more like pressure than freedom?
I'll be very candid here. I am not good at sharing my faith. It makes me nervous, right? I get a lot of anxiety, I guess. Well, not anxiety, but I'm not great at it, or at least I think I would not be great at it. It's hard to put into words, right? I feel like it's something that I'm bad about, right? Sometimes I don't think I'm always living up to what I should be, right? I will admit, I'm going to tell you right now, it's an area I struggle with. Not because I don't want other people to know who Jesus is, right? I do.
Right.
And the harder part is that just being willing to shine a bit more, right? Because people have always been more of a hard thing for me, and so that's the part of the faith that's like you have to contend with people more often, not like struggle with them, but you have to talk to them more, and you have to be willing to say hard things, because not everything in the Christian faith, because things our ears like to hear. And on one hand, there's a part where it's just like you don't want to bring conflict, right? You don't want to make people angry, and I don't like making people angry, you know. And so it's like, but sometimes you have to be willing to do that, and sometimes you have to be willing to walk up to someone and be like, "Hey, how you doing? What do you know about God, right? Or can I talk to you about this?" Sometimes that's not easy to do, and I also I've engaged with law material where people make it seem very easy and quick. Like, I don't know if have you heard of Ray Comfort at all? Yeah, I'm very familiar with Ray Comfort stuff. And so there's that pressure to it, right? Where it's just like, I've always felt it is a sort of pressure. And I know that's not what it's meant to be. And so I struggle with that, and I'll say that very frankly, because I don't think it's something I should hide that I struggle with, because I want to be better about it, right? And so that's something I personally deal with, and I don't want to deal with it like that. And so that's something I deal with. That's something, it feels like pressure, because it means talking to people, it means being candid, it means saying hard stuff, or stuff that's hard for other people. And that's difficult sometimes. You worry you'll mess it up. You worry you're only going to make things worse. And a lot of that, I think, just comes down to just have to trust God and do it. And it's not always my strong suit, but it's something I would like to improve.
All right.
I think that if we get pressure from if we don't feel well, or we're very, very tired, and we feel like we should still go to church, and then of course you go to sleep while you're at church.
Yeah. All right. Our physical well-being, oftentimes we'll try to push through. Okay. Anybody else? How does when does your faith feel more like pressure than freedom? So.
I'm not going to what Ian said. Sometimes I feel like when I'm doing Bible studies with friends and other things like that, I'm scared to say the wrong thing and give her false knowledge and not the real thing, which is scary sometimes.
Sure.
I think a lot of times a lot of it also comes down to prayer. You can't forget prayer. That's important. And that's always the thing. I imagine every person, especially people I comfort, anyone who goes out to evangelize, they're always going to pray first. That's always something they do. Whenever they have these prayer meetings and these gospel meetings, right? They pray. And prayer is something just like, hey, I need your help, right? That's the first thing. It's humility. Just like, I can't do this on my own. And so I have to remember, when we struggle with that, we have to remember, hey, we need to talk to God about this, right? He's the one who's going to speak through us. We have to trust that. And we just have to speak what we know from God. And He'll give us that, I think. If we stay in faith, He'll give us that. And He's the one that'll do the rest of the work. All we have to do is sow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I think this goes to the heart of your problem there.
Yeah.
That's something. A lot of times we plant and we say, how are we going to make this seed grow? And it's not on us to do. It's not on us. It's God will provide the increase if we plant and water.
We just sow.
Yep. All right. So last one, and we'll close out with this. If your faith was measured by your life Monday through Saturday, what would it reveal? It's the last question on the sheet. If your faith was measured by your life Monday through Saturday, what would it reveal?
I need to slow down, stop putting every everyday things that are trivial during the day-to-day life too high on priority list, and slow down and spend more time talking to God.
If you think about the rest of your week, Monday through Saturday, if your faith was measured by that, what would it reveal?
I hope it would be the same thing as on Sunday.
Yeah.
If it's still.
I think a lot of times when we don't take the time to examine ourselves and reflect, it can. We like to think it, right? We hope it does, and we will acknowledge it verbally. And a lot of times, if we take that time audit and we say, okay, are we actually? What are our actions saying instead of what we intellectually know we should be doing? And sometimes it can be very shocking, or other times it can be very validating, and it can say, okay, well we're on the right track. And but I think any of us, no matter what we're doing, no matter how well we're doing it, that we can always have room for improvement and growth, because as long as we're breathing here, the life of a Christian is never to stay stagnant. We're always to continue to get to the next level and grow and progress. And so there is on that sheet there, if you like, there is a question at the end. So take that home and reflect on it. If you'd like to answer that question there, that would be great. You don't have to bring it back. It's not for homework unless you want to do it. But I really appreciate Gary's lesson today, because a lot of times we will second guess Jesus, and not with our words and not what we do on Sunday, but a lot of times with our actions. And what our actions show is our actual priorities. And as Jesus was trying to teach these Pharisees and these religious leaders, you've got to understand the why. Why is God doing this? What is the spiritual significance? And that day it was the Sabbath. But today, what is our purpose? What is our mission? If our mission is to glorify God, how are we glorifying Him? Are we glorifying Him? When are we glorifying Him? And so I just want to leave you with that this evening. Ask you to reflect on this last question. What would your audit be if you had to audit yourself Monday through Saturday? How will you stand? What would God want you to do? What could you do differently this next week? And if there is anybody that has the need to respond to the gospel call, we can help you. If you have questions, we can study with you. If you just need prayers, we'd love to be able to lift you up in prayer. And just know what's going on in your life so that we know what to pray for continuously. So if there is anybody that has a need, please come forward while we stand and sing the invitation song.